Welcome to NATRC's 2023 Let's Ride seminar series. Today we're going to be having a talk. The talk we titled "Are We There Yet? Maps, Apps, and Trail Master Hacks." This will be presented by Kris Gray from Region 5 and by myself, Bill Wingle out of Region 3. Kris Gray is a trail master for rides in Region 5. I myself am a ride manager and a trail master in Region 3. I'm going to turn the talk over to Kris at this time.
Good evening, guys. Thank you all for joining. Bill and I are excited to be presenting this and going over the basics of maps and Trailmaster hacks. And then we also look forward to any questions y'all have at the end. Hopefully we can all keep everybody from one, getting lost on the trail, and two, if you want to be a Trailmaster, maybe give you some insight into what that takes. And if you do want to be a Trailmaster, Bill and I are more than happy to talk to you offline about doing that. But first of all, we wanted to cover the basics of map rules. We obviously know that NATRC has a lot of guidelines that we have to follow to make it a ride where it stays sanctioned and it qualifies for awards, points, and mileage. The rule book, however, is very limited on what it does as far as guidance for map rules. One of the things says that we must be given maps to the riders and a schedule of estimated times and or distances and elevations for various points on the ride. Each rider shall be responsible for his or her own time. So we do have to give a map, and the precise time allowed for completing the course is determined by the Trailmaster and publicly announced to all riders prior to the start of the ride. So that's pretty much it on maps in the rule book. The ride management manual talks about that we need to pick out at least 4 easily recognizable checkpoints. Usually this is where you would see us put A, B, C, D, and we have to put those on the map and include them in the time schedule. And then as far as drawing the map, I've heard about these. I have not had one, but I do know that apparently they used to be just hand drawn on paper. But we can use topo maps, and we want to show like camp, checkpoints, lunch, forward motion point, which would be the 2-mile or 1-mile marker, and then the color of ribbons used. Keep in mind, some of our venues don't allow ribbons. We have to use the permanent trail markers. And so in that case, we would use that coloring. But for the most part, Trailmasters have free range. They are not required to provide a lot of detail. So it's very important at ride briefing that y'all take notes and ask lots of questions when the map is being presented. As you go region to region, I know some of you have come to visit us, and I know some Region 5 folks have gone to visit other regions. You will see a wide variety of maps. Like I mentioned, some are hand-drawn on a piece of paper. That was apparently more common a while back. We might take a park map and modify that. That's really common with developed park maps, and it's good quality and it makes it easier for us. You may have hand-drawn maps on like a topography map. Oh, your cat.
My cat stepped on the computer.
Your cat's assisting today.
Yes.
Might have hand-drawn maps on the topography maps, and then you might also have like these maps that, what are you doing to me, Bill?
Oh, sorry.
Bill is click happy tonight. And then stop it.
I think there's some delay. I'm back on the wide variety of maps page.
Okay, well, there we go. There's a little bit of a delay. Okay. The problem with obviously hand-drawn maps is they can be very accurate or they could be really misleading and inaccurate. And then what's most commonly used, or at least what I use, is GPS data plotted on a map or use of satellite imagery. Those tend to be more accurate. They're much more common. And at least for me, the feedback I've gotten from my riders is that they prefer those. All right, now, Bill, you may start.
Okay. Now, some examples.
Some examples. So here are some examples of maps from different regions and what they might look like. As you can see, we've got the colors on here based on what color ribbon or trail markers you would be following. Sometimes directional arrows are provided. You can clearly see the points, X, H, A, and then there's the timing sheet piece that's included that tells you, the distance from like say camp to point A and how long that should take you on the average pace assigned by the Trailmaster. So again, as you can see, like by these two maps, they have a very different look about them. One's topography, the other one's like a state map. And then we've got some more examples here. We've got a Region 5 map here, then which is Florida, so it's flat. And we've got some LED maps where it's a nice big loop. Again, it just really varies based on your trail master and what they have access to and are able to use. But the key, again, is to, when you're looking at your maps, you're going at ride briefing, is to listen and take really good notes. And don't be afraid to ask your trail master questions or even find them after the briefing and say, hey, I don't understand this. I do one-on-one reviews, and I know Bill will do it. So don't hesitate to ask if you have questions and you're not clear. We don't want you to be lost. We want you to go out and have a fantastic time, and that's key. And we also want to be able to judge you. And if you're lost, we don't get to judge you. We just get to hunt you down. All right.
And regarding questions, if you have any questions during this talk, feel free to type in a question in the Zoom Q&A question box, and I'm monitoring that, and we'll try to answer your questions as we go along. I think we have a little bit of delay.
Yeah. Okay, and then required basics of an NATRC map. So this kind of goes back to trail masters don't have much guidance. You know, we want it to be a site map. We want it to have the trail on there with an indication of ribbon color, and we want the 4 timing points. If possible, we want you to put, you know, camp. If your lunch is not at camp, where that would be if you have a lunch break. Obviously, the 2-mile marker has to be there. And we try to put things like, for me, like landmarks. I know Bill does this. Like if you're going to pass an old barn, we're going to try to point that out to you. Or if you're going to pass a pond, we want you to be aware of those big markings. But no, we do not have to put the PNR locations on a map. We have the power, I guess you could say, to surprise you. We typically don't. We want you to know where they are. Again, that's just a good reference point. If you get lost, if you get hurt, you know where you are. We are required to list the time and or distance to each point, and we have to put the time to points are calculated by the riders. Sometimes I typically give them and then hope somebody checks me because I am human and I do make mistakes. We are required to put total ride minimum, mid, and maximum time. That's usually somewhere on the bottom of the map. And we also have to give that information to the timer. All right. Excuse me. Other optional parts of an NATRC map, we have like the north arrow. Some maps automatically put those on there, some don't. Typically, we all position our maps where the top is north. Some maps provide scale, some don't. Some of us indicate other trails, some of us don't. Like one place I use has a ton of crisscross trails, so I don't put those on the map. I only put what I flagged. We might put roads and other trails, you know, like if there's a bridge or a major highway, again, it's a good reference and you know where you are. I know Bill does this in Region 3. We don't have this so much here in Region 5, but he provides pacing per section, which kind of tells you, you know, where you can move out versus maybe where the trail is more technical. Some maps might have latitude and longitude marks. We might put big landmarks. If the trails are named, we might include that. And then a lot of times you might get a second page or on the back of your map, you'll have written directions and comments. Again, this will vary by region. The big thing to note when reading your maps, and again, we want you to have fun and not get lost, is camp. Where is camp? You want to know where camp is, so you know where you're starting, and that makes it a lot easier to figure out where you are on the map if you're between, say, camp and your first point. You want to know when and what color trail you are following. You know, is your trail one color for the day? Is it going to swap colors? Again, this will be discussed in ride briefing, but it's good for you to study your map the night before and, you know, remember in your head, I'm going from blue to orange to red, or if I'm just blue today. And that also keeps you, like if you're doing orange one day and blue the next, you know, you don't want to get on the wrong trail if you're looking at today's map and then you get off on blue, that would be bad. And then points of interest. Again, these may or may not be timing points, but they're good to note on the map. They're good to have an idea in your mind of what you're looking for. Like, oh, okay, between point, I don't know, A and B, I know I'm going to pass a pond. Well, if you get going along and you never pass a pond, you might be on the wrong trail. Also, a lot of times we'll put these at intersections. We'll mark those. So, you know, like we'll say go left here, go right there, maybe go straight. We might tell you there's water at that intersection. If there's lunch, because of an open ride going longer than the 6 hours, we're going to put if it's on trail or in camp. And then we are going to put the 1 or 2 mile marker, depending on if it's a leisure ride, novice, CP, or open. And typically that is the last point we will put on the map. So it'll say like 2 miles, 2 mile marker to camp will be your last piece of your timing chart. So reading the map, the timing table, this is very important because as I think most trail masters will say during ride briefing, we're all about staying within your window. And I know people always ask me, especially newer riders, what does that mean? And that means we don't want you to get ahead of time and get to point A, 20 minutes in when you should be there 25 minutes in. And we don't want you to be late either, right? Because if you start out behind, it's going to be a lot harder for you to catch up. But the other reason that we like to say that is we have to get your judges around so that they can see all your beautiful smiling faces. And if you are out of those windows, it makes it much harder for us to get the judges moved and set up so they can see you more than one time on the trail. This also helps safety riders because a lot of times they will cut and get to a point and do a head count. And so if you're out of the window, that could hold them up and they may not know, are you lost or are you just behind on time? So some things to keep in mind with the timing table is, you want to check your timing and your points. Like every time you get to a point, if you get to A, look and see what the map says. Should I be here at 1 hour and 10 minutes and I'm here at 1 hour and 15 minutes? Okay, I'm okay. I can move forward. You want to check your total mileage. So if you're using a GPS watch or a phone app that's checking your mileage, look and see what it says compared to where you are when you get to that point in the timing table. Like, are you on trail or does your thing say 3 miles and it says you should have gone 6? Well, you may have missed a section. You obviously want to keep your total estimated time and keep your minimum and maximum times in your head. Other things that we provide with these things are the segment miles. For example, A to B is 2 miles, the time it should take to do that section. And then again, some regions provide an average pace per section. Some do it for the whole ride. And again, PNRs may not be listed explicitly. Typically, like in this example here, we'll put PNRs here. We're adding 15 minutes into the section so that you know why the time jumped, but it's not required. Other things that you might notice on your map are the topography. That's where you might see the pacing change if pacing is provided per section. If it's steep and slow, you're going to notice that. If it's flat, you could make up time. If the pacing isn't provided, but you can see the elevation changes, again, you can kind of plan your ride the night before and look for those and say, oh, it looks flat here. I know I can boogie and make up time. We're over here. Maybe I want to walk to the PNR. And then navigation, a turn is up the next valley. Again, the maps are there to help you and to keep you from getting lost. While trail masters flag as thoroughly as possible, whatever we put up, we do have to take down, but things do eat them, or somebody might have a prescribed burn the day before your trail and burn them all, or a storm come through and blow them off. So it is good to use your map and not just the ribbons. Water and water access might be listed on the map. Again, ponds, the water trough, that way you can plan your horse's drinking, at least offer. We know they don't always take it. Where other trails are so that you don't, again, maybe don't turn on these by mistake. It may help you know when you're getting close to a turn, like you're like, oh, it looks like I passed 2 trails before I turned. And then again, for self-rescue, if you get lost on the trail or injured off trail and then get turned around even more, it's good to know like, okay, the last point I saw was B. So when you can call for help, people know like, okay, somewhere between B and C is where they got off trail and that's the section we need to search first. Again, it's good to know where the roads are for self-rescue. Maybe your horse is just tired and you're like, I need help. I need to get him on the trailer and out of here. And then also, so you'll know if you'll be riding with traffic. Obviously, typically if that happens, we're going to have people there watching traffic, holding it up so that you can cross and then go on your way safely.
Okay. We do have a question from Kristen Johansson.
Okay.
Is there an accepted time frame to be at a point, i.e., to not miss judging? In other words, must you always be within plus or minus 15 minutes of optimal time to be safe of not missing judged opportunities?
So yes, I would say staying in your window point to point is important to keep from missing the judges. That is not necessarily always a 15-minute window either way. So for example, if you are riding the slowest pace or the fastest pace, when you time out, you all time out at the same time. So when you get to point A, you may not be like, if you're riding mid-time, it may not be 15 minutes until the maximum time. If you remember the old math problems of a train leaves the station at this time and this other train leaves the station at this other time, but they're going two different speeds. When would they meet? It's very similar when you're calculating this, right? So you gain that window throughout the ride. It's not necessarily at the first point you have a 30-minute window to get there. Um, I have done it where for some rides I allow that, but it depends on the logistics and how quickly I can move the judges. But for the most part, if you want to know your window for each point, yeah, that's something that you could easily calculate and write down on the back of your map or ask the trail master. They most likely have it.
I'll add a couple caveats to that. In Region 3, I typically will give you the plus or minus 15 minutes. By rule, if we are going to hold you to a specific time at a specific location, we have to announce that at ride briefing. So if the map says you need to be somewhere at an hour and 10 minutes, plus or minus 15, if we have not mentioned that, you can be there early or you can be there late, and we can't necessarily ding you for that. We can't necessarily ding you for being early, at least. There are also caveats that if the judges have caught you out on trail earlier in the day and you have a hold time, or if you have a wait time, you're allowed to add all those wait times to the next point down the trail. So if you have a 5-minute hold, you can add 5 minutes to that back window. We still don't want you more than 15 minutes early, but now you can be like 20 minutes late, for example. I understand that I've taken judges around, and if there are 20 riders on trail and 19 come through, and we haven't seen the 20th rider for 15 minutes, the judges will often move on, figuring that 20th rider has lost somewhere or we've missed them somehow, and they will move on. So you do want to stay within your window as much as possible. But there are certainly caveats to that. If you can always see other riders ahead of you, you're going to be safe. But just kind of keep that in mind. We really do appreciate you staying within the window, but if we've held you up for extended periods of time, you do not have to make up that time in the ride.
Correct. Good points, Bill. Reading the map. So GPSs, those are really popular. Oh, sorry.
I'll steal this.
Okay, I'm sorry. I can't see the numbers on the slides right now. Go for it, Bill.
We're trading off on pages, and it's at least in Region 3, I've been kind of the GPS guru, so I've taken over some of this. So, riding with a GPS, this is an optional thing to do. More and more of us are doing this, and I personally think I'm a tech geek, and so I've been carrying GPSs for 15 years, ever since I started the sport. But there are a lot of good reasons to carry a GPS and get used to using them. Obviously, with a GPS, they got mapping capability, but I also use mine as a stopwatch. It's a convenient tool that I can start and stop and get a stopwatch going. And my particular GPS allows me to keep track of total time on trail. And it's a little bit more convenient easier to read than my watch. It's nice in that GPSs, whether it's a handheld, your smartphone, or a watch GPS, it's easy to keep track of how far you have gone down the trail. If you're using your map as you should, if you know that you're between point A and point D, point A and point B, and point A is at 3 miles and point B is at 7 miles, and you're 6 miles out, according to your GPS, you have an idea of how far your next timing point is, and so you can start to judge how well you're staying on time, on pace during the ride. To some extent, you can test how accurate the map distances are. GPS, if you send 10 people out on trail with GPSs, you'll get 10 slightly different answers, but they're more or less the same. This happened more on older maps when we weren't using GPSs to make the maps, but sometimes you'll get mystery miles being added to the map distance or disappearing from the map, And if you're carrying a GPS and you show up at timing point a mile early or a mile late, you can catch those mistakes early on and figure out how to deal with them. GPSs are very good for monitoring your pace. I can look down at my GPS and it bounces around a little bit, but it'll tell me that my horse is walking at, say, 4.5 miles an hour. And and that may be if I'm going open, that might be a little bit slow. If I'm doing a leisure ride, if I keep up that pace, I know I'm going to have to stop and eat some grass occasionally. But you can start to learn how fast your horse walks or trots, and it's a good tool for learning how to pace your horse. If you get out on trail and you're confused about where you are and you're using a mapping GPS, they will drop breadcrumbs and leave a track behind. If you have a well-prepared map, you can compare the pattern that you're leaving behind against the pattern on the map of the trail, and you can get an idea of where you're located. If you have a GPS, if the trail master has supplied you with a GPX track, the trail, they're also very nice. So you can look down at your GPS and say, "Are you on trail?" Unfortunately, it won't tell you if you're on the right part of the trail. People have been known to take wrong turns and go down the trail backwards, but at least you know that you're on trail. Or if you look down and you're not on trail, you can usually figure out quickly by looking at your GPS where you can pick up the trail again, how far back you have to go, and that kind of thing. Reading them. One of the next questions is when you're out on the trail and we have marked the trail and we've put up signs and there are ribbons everywhere, and maybe we've given you a GPS. Some people kind of wonder why they should carry the map. We've given you the map for a number of reasons. One, I'm going to start back up a little bit. When we've given you a map and we do expect you to carry it, and ideally it should be easily available. A lot of people, they'll just they'll fold it and stick it in their pocket so they can access it easily. I tend to use a clear map case, which I tie to my horse's saddle. And so as I'm riding down the trail, I can just pick it up, look at it, and drop it and move on. Having it tied to the saddle or tied to you is nice in that you're less likely to drop it. Then we move on to the question of why do I need a map? The trails are marked. I should be good just being able to follow the trails, shouldn't I? One, we do have a belief that you should be able to read a map, and we're out in the woods. Being able to read a map is a good skill to have, and we do encourage that. Most of the trails you're going to be riding on yourself when you go out into the woods aren't going to be ribboned nicely for you to say go this way and go that way, and may or may not have signs. Also, the reason we want you to have the map is we want you to check it often. Often we want you to look at the map to confirm that you're on trail, that you're following the right trail, that you're on time, and that you know where your next point is. What point am I going to next? Is a P&R coming up? That kind of thing. When you're on trail, we often ribbon the trail in multiple colors, and so we want to make sure that you know what trail you're supposed to be on. Often we do loops, and so you might come up to an intersection, and if you're following pink ribbon, there might be pink ribbons going left, and there might be pink ribbons going right, and so you need to be able to know which way to turn. And if there's no sign there, you'll need to look at the map to figure out which way to go. Keep in mind, it's the other reason we carry the map is that both signs and ribbons have been known to disappear on trails. Sometimes the wind can come along and blow away a sign. I've had issues myself where cows and elk come along and eat all my ribbons on an entire section of trail. I've also had issues where we've had people, unfortunately, who've stolen ribbons in entire sections. And trail masters will try very hard to make sure everything is well ribboned, but sometimes you'll get to segments of trail, and the only way for you to know how to move down the trail is to look at your map and kind of figure out where should I be going next. At those points in time, it's also, if you have cell service, it's good to call your trail master, and they may be able to give you some tips. Can, excuse me, give you some hints, but it's always good to carry your map.
And I was gonna add something in real quick here, Bill. Another thing that a lot of people do, at least over here, is they also take a picture of their map and with their phone. So if it falls out of their pocket or gets tangled in a vine and ripped off their saddle and they don't realize it, or they drop it, or they knock it off, or it starts pouring down rain and their zippy bag is suddenly leaking, they have another image of it on them. Or if they fall off their horse and their horse runs away with the map, they also have it on their phone. So thank God for technology, right? So that's just another way to have it easily available or have like a backup copy. I, as a trail master, keep a copy on my phone because I can't tell you how many riders I run into while we're out on the trail that say, I lost my map. Will you text it to me? So if there is service, sometimes that is also an option. So it's good for the trail master to also have a backup copy somewhere. And then
Yes.
we had a question from Kristen that says a training session someday on how to make a GPX track would be a great help to RMs who have seen how helpful they are and would like to make one for their own rides. And so I'm sure that we could probably arrange a separate training for that, for those that were interested in how do you get it's pretty much like you take the file off of either your GPS watch or your tracking app on your phone. But yeah, that's something that's a good idea. We should definitely maybe offer something on that.
Yeah, with GPSs now, they more or less, most of them will more or less automatically collect the data as you go on the ride. Um, and then depending what device it is, how you get that information off the device and into software to actually make the maps. That gets to be a little bit more complicated, but there's some very good tools on that. I wrote an article on the hoof print several years ago where I talk about some of the different software that I use to do that. And I'd be happy to point you in that direction or offer anybody any help at any time about how to take GPS data and turn it into maps for later use. One of the other big reasons to carry a map with you is that things go wrong. You may get lost. Something may happen to your horse. Your horse may go lame, and you may decide I don't want to go down the trail any longer. I need to find the nearest road, or I need to find the nearest point where somebody can come pick me up. And if you have your map and you know where you are, you can figure out where the best place is to get yourself. So that's another big reason to carry a map. Using the map. I recommend you look at the map a lot during the ride. If you're ever in doubt going down the trail and you're confused, pull out the map and look at it. It's part of this it will include is keeping track of timing points you've gone by and timing points you expect to get to, and have you been there. Stop and look at the map, and it will answer a lot of questions for you. It's when you come to an intersection, look at the map. Looking at the map, taking the time to look at a map for a few seconds can save you lots of time if you make a wrong turn by mistake. We've had one ride where it's GPS tracks. I'll talk about the example in a minute, but people went left instead of right and they didn't realize they had made the wrong turn for about 2 miles, and they were following the proper ribbons, but they didn't look at their map, and instead of going left, they went right. So pulling out the map can save you a lot of trouble. Also, when you come to a timing point, always check to say, am I on time? Am I in the 30-minute window? Am I in the window where I want to be? From a pacing point of view, I personally prefer to ride 5 to 10 minutes ahead of minimum all the time, and I might push all the way to 15 minutes ahead of the min time. The reason is I know stuff goes wrong during a ride. I ride hoof boots and they occasionally fly off and you have to track them down and put them back on. People need to use the bathroom. Um, Sometimes you have to help people out and being ahead. I like to personally be ahead. I know other people, my wife in particular, she likes to ride a little bit behind mid-time. She likes to be as easy as possible on the horse and ride a slower ride. So you just want to know where you are within the ride. Um, if you're not where you want to be within the window, when you get to a timing point and you know when you were supposed to be there, you can quickly determine, should I pick up the pace a little bit? Should I slow down? Should I graze? Do I have more time to graze? Or sit and make sure my horse has enough water. Also, sometimes you get to a timing point and you're supposed to be there like 2 hours, and it says an hour and a half, and so you're basically there 30 minutes early, and that indicates that something's wrong. Either you're going down the trail way too fast, or it could be that you've missed a turn and you've taken a shortcut, or it could be that they've miscalculated, the trail master has miscalculated the distance on the map. It's not to say that you can necessarily, if there's been a mistake on the map, it's not something you can fix on trail. If you just think you've been going too fast, it's a big red flag to slow down and maybe just stop for a little bit and graze. Or if you had questions earlier back on the trail and saying, well, should I have gone that way? That might be an indicator that maybe you did take a wrong turn and you should think about going back and correcting what you've potentially done wrong. Miscellaneous map comments. Again, north is usually to the top of the map. If not, it should say so. I have only seen a few maps where north is not to the top, but the trail master will let you know when that happens, and it'll be on the map. Do you need to be a great map reader to ride an NATRC? And the quick answer to that is no. You do have to be able to keep track of where you've been and where you're going. This is an example I talked about before, is if you're riding out of camp and you are going down the trail and you come to an intersection at point U where we have pink ribbons going left and right, it's stop, look at your map, and if you see arrows like this saying that we're going to be going clockwise today, make sure you go ahead and take a left. Hopefully there's a sign here. Sometimes they disappear for various reasons. But stop, take a look at the map. And where I've had the most trouble is people have ridden the trail before, and it's like, oh, I know where we're going, and they just take off in the wrong direction. So be careful. Stop, take a look at the map. It'll save you a lot of trouble going down the road. Kris, I think we're back to your section. Or not.
Yep.
I'll let you do this section.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about trail ribbons and marking. As we've mentioned several times, the color of the loop is important. I like to flag with multiple colors. A lot of the places that I am trail master for don't have permanent markings. In fact, their trails have no markings. So without the flags, it would be a lot of fun, I think. But I do like to use different colors because we do loops. Sometimes we do a figure eight, and I want you to know which end of the figure eight you're on. Sometimes it's permanently marked trail, and we're using their colors. And again, we want you to know where you are. So in some regions, ribbons are always hung on one side of the trail or always on the other. Like, for example, my ribbons are always going to be on the left. So as you're going down the trail, if you're going the right direction, and it's going to be on the left-hand side. If they're on your right and you're not an area I've specifically said you're going to backtrack, then you're going the wrong direction and you need to stop, look at your map, go maybe back to the last intersection and figure out, did I turn right and I should have turned left? Most of the regions do use the 3 ribbons to indicate a turn. We don't always just put them at the turn. Like usually we'll put like 3 and then 3 more at the turn and maybe 3 right after the turn to draw your eye that direction. Again, the ribbons are not necessarily on the side that you're going to turn towards. It may be the ribbons are all on the left and you're turning right. So it's important, stop, look at your map, look at the intersections. It's pretty standard for us to either use yellow ribbons or caution tape. I buy the caution tape that says do not enter all over it. Um, and we hang that from trees or other places like in the middle, not on one side, like in the middle, like don't go this way. We might run it across the trail if it's a big open area. You might have it going all the way across, like please don't go this way. And then, as we've mentioned before, some places won't even let us ribbon. We're required to use their permanent markers. So, your ride master, I mean, your trail master will go over that during ride briefing and just make note of that. Am I looking for ribbons hanging? Maybe they're on clothespins. Like Bill and I both use clothespins. Some people don't. I do that because one, it's ours, and two, it's a lot easier for me to put up and take down. But some places are like, no, you have to use our markers. Well, they may be painted horseshoes. They may be painted block nailed to a tree. So make sure you make note of that during ride briefing. Like, what am I looking for so that you don't follow the wrong marker? We've had that situation where there was another ride and not all their ribbons got pulled before ours. Somebody got off trail, ended up on a trail we weren't using, but the previous event had used similar color ribbons to ours. And so they thought they were on the right trail and went along and realized they weren't. So, it's really important, again, check your map, pay attention at ride briefing. And again, there's no official guidelines for trail masters in this area. So it varies by individual. Trail masters work really hard. So they're going to do whatever they think one is best for you and the rider, like you, the riders, for them, as far as taking it up and putting it out and all of that good stuff, and what the venue is going to allow. This is one of my favorite hacks is using an old-fashioned, I say old-fashioned because it's not digital, but a watch with secondhand as my timer. I also use my GPS watch. I look like a watch salesman when I go out. I have like a GPS watch on. And then I have two like secondhand watches on in case one dies. But what I like to do is set, my secondhand watch to noon. So when I'm an hour out, it's at 1. And it makes it super easy. I don't have to think. I can just look at it and go. If I bump my GPS watch and it stops, I haven't lost my time because I'm not gonna, mess up the digital one. And it also makes it easy if I'm at either like at a judging spot and I'm having to be held, I can easily look and say, oh, okay, I know where my minute hand is. And it's easier than saying, okay, well, I stopped at 25 and now I'm at 32. And how many hold minutes is that? So that's just my preference. Everybody does their own thing. And Walmart has them super cheap. So I don't know. I think I paid $5 for like a really pink butterfly one, and nobody's gonna steal it. So that again, that's just something you can choose to do. You can choose. That's what I was taught when I first came. I didn't have a GPS. My phone didn't have the fancy apps, and I just went with that. And I found it kept me in my window. I had no idea what my mileage was, but it kept me in my window. Another option is, have your watch on normal time and just look and say, okay, I timed out at 7:09 and everybody else timed out at 7. So I know at 8:09. You just know that the 9 mark is your hour mark. So again, it's just another backup. You can obviously set the timer on your phone and do it that way. I don't have good luck with that. My phones die or I bump them. So I don't know. I'm not good with the phone, but I'm just old school. All right, next slide, please. So this one's near and dear to my heart because I preach this. Take notes at the ride briefing. Like, draw on your map. Draw all over it. Whatever will make it easy for you when you are on your horse and you're trying to figure out, 1, where you are, and 2, are you on time? I use like Bill, this is one of Bill's maps that he marked up, and it is a beautiful example. Like, I love all the different colors. He's got his pace, because his region does pace per section, in black. He's got the mileage in red, and he's got the time in green. So he knows exactly what number he's looking at when he looks at his map. He's not having to go, oh, they're all in black. Which one is that? So I love this. Other things I like to write on my map during ride briefing, and I encourage the riders to put down, is like, if I mention this is a good spot to get water, or water troughs are here and sponge buckets are here, or there's a creek if you turn left here and go about 10 yards and then get back on trail. So make the notes. If they mention, a haunted barn, or you're going to pass an old tractor grown up with weeds, or you're going to pass a hay field with a bunch of hay rolled up in it. Like, make those notes. Don't be hesitant to draw on your map. It's yours. Make it your own and make it easy for you to follow so you have a good successful ride and you don't get lost. And if you mess up, go get another map from your trail master. It is not a big deal. They always have extra copies, and if they don't, they will make you one. So, but these are some good tips. Like, well, sorry, Bill. Like, he had, again, the time, and the mileage. That's typically what I put. I don't have the pace because we don't do it that way here. But anyway, that's a great example. And you can see it's in his beautiful waterproof map holder that he attaches to his saddle. So hopefully if it rains, it doesn't all get runny ink everywhere. All right, now you may proceed. Again, this goes back to kind of what we've talked about. Use the map the night before when you're looking at it. If it's got the topography, look for sections where you can make up time. Again, that's going to vary on the venue and terrain. Maybe look for sections where you think you might lose time. Like, you're like, oh, that looks really hilly. Or they said this is super deep mud or super deep sand. You want to walk here. We're going to point that out because we want you and your horse to have a good, safe ride. We don't want you running through the deep mud trying to make up time and somebody slip and fall or pull a tendon or anything like that. Like, we want you to be successful. So we're going to set you up for that. If you know where the PNRs are, try to avoid rushing into them, even if you're a little behind. Like, walk in, you can make up the time afterwards. I like to give the PNRs. I know Bill does. I do this for several reasons. One, if you're in trouble, like you don't feel good or you think your horse doesn't feel good and you need to pull, if you know where that is on the map and you're close to it, you might be able to get off your horse and walk in. Or, have somebody run up to the PNR and tell them you need help and send them back. Some people don't put the PNRs on the map. They just give you an idea in the vicinity. So again, it just depends on the trail master. The other reason I like to give it is, like Bill noted here, riders familiar with the ride, maybe we put the PNRs at the same spot every year at that venue. They're going to know, and that might give them a slight advantage because they're like, oh, it's coming, I'm going to walk. And everybody else is like boogieing, right? And they're like, what? They slow down. So again, just take lots of notes, mark up your map, ask questions. Do not be afraid to ask questions. And then again, if you have to make up time, it's really good to do that after PNR. Your horse has had a chance to rest. They might feel more refreshed. You've checked all your tack, it's good and secure, and you can go boogie in. All right. And the other thing that especially, and I will say I have some fantastic help, but never hesitate to offer to help flag the trail. If you're near the area, or even if you're like, hey, it's a little bit of a drive for me, I'm going to go in on Wednesday, so I'll be sitting around on Thursday, and it wouldn't hurt for my horse to stretch their legs and do like an easy, it's not hard to flag trail, even if you just did like 2 miles, right, from camp to the 2 mile marker and back. Every little bit helps. Or maybe you go help put the water troughs out. Like, you're at camp early and you're like, hey, I can put them out and fill them. Just, show me where to go. Or maybe you help staple up the letters. Or if you're staying later, after the ride, I'm blessed. I have one of our riders' husbands always comes with her, and he and I take an ATV out at one of the rides I do. And as soon as the last rider's in, he and I are out on the trail and the flags are down by Sunday night because I have a deadline to get them down by a certain time on Monday. And it's a huge help to have that, even though we're both in the same ATV. I drive, he pulls and throws it in the bag. And then we get off in, intersections and we all take turns grabbing everything. But, help your trail masters because it's a lot of work. And the advantage to helping them beforehand is you get a little peek at the trail. So you can familiarize yourself with the territory. If you're out on the trail and you see a lost rider, you might be able to help guide them, especially if there's no cell phone service and you can't call. So, but anyway, don't hesitate to volunteer, and you get to ride your horse more. So that's always fun too.
Okay, I'll take the next ones we start.
Okay.
It's Kris is very good at math, but I started throwing in some math, and I know how much people like doing math in their head on trail. Most people don't, obviously, but if you can keep some basic numbers in mind, it can really help you and give you an idea of how quickly you're going to be somewhere or not. And if you can keep track of some of these numbers, you can actually help calm yourself down. Say, yeah, I'm running behind, but it's and I'm a ways out on trail. But if you do a few calculations in your head, it's like, yeah, I'm behind, but I'm not that far behind, and I don't really have to rush as much as maybe I thought I did, or maybe you really do have to rush. But few things to keep in mind. One of the big things is we ask you to ride in a 30-minute window during the ride, but at the end of the ride, you really have to be in that 30-minute window. You don't want to be early. You don't want to be late. Being early is a really silly way to lose points on your card. And so what I do is when I come up to the 2 mile, or if you're riding leisure, the 1 mile, and they may not be exactly 1 mile or 2 miles, but they're usually pretty close. Keep in mind that if you're in leisure or novice or CP, you're probably paced at 4 miles an hour or just about. And even for open in the 2 mile, in Region 3, we always have you come in the last 2 miles at 4 miles an hour to cool your horse down. And 2 miles takes 30 minutes. At 4 miles an hour, it's 15 minutes per mile. And, or if you're open rider in different parts of the trail, often I know out east, they'll time the rides at about 5 miles per hour. At 5 miles an hour, 2 miles takes 24 minutes. It's at 5 miles an hour, it's 12 minutes per mile. At the P&I, when you come up to the forward motion sign, the 1 mile, the 2 mile, don't let yourself come in early. I always like to give myself a little bit of a buffer at the 2 mile. My horse walks about 4.5 miles an hour. So if I say, oh, it's going to take me 30 minutes to get in because it's 4 miles an hour and that's my horse walks. If my horse is walking a little bit faster that day, I don't want to arrive 2 minutes early because my horse was a little bit faster paced. So I will usually wait 5 to 10 minutes after kind of the minimum time where I could start in, and then I'll start in and I can easily come in the more or less in the middle of my window. At the same time, if I'm come up to the 2 mile and I'm actually a little bit behind the window, I'm saying I'm a couple minutes behind the maximum time at the 2 mile. Do I have to race into? Do I have to race in? Keep in mind, you do not have to come in at mid-time. You can come in at the back of the window. So if it's paced at 4 miles an hour, I do have to pick up the pace a little bit, but I don't have to canter in. If you're 2 miles out and you're just a couple minutes behind, you don't want to dawdle, but based on this quick calculation, you kind of rough these things out in your head. If I come in at 4.3, 4.5 miles an hour, I'm going to get in just in time. So the quick math calculation is, how far is it? How fast am I going? Multiply that by 60, and that'll tell you how many minutes you have. All of us carry smartphones, and they have calculators on them, so you can do a little bit of quick math. And even if you're behind, sometimes doing a little bit of quick math on the trail is going to save you a lot of effort. You say, oh, I'm out of my window, I need to canter in, and you really don't. And if you canter in, and particularly if it's kind of rocky, you don't want to risk a lameness on your horse in the last 2 miles of the ride. If you can just kind of do a little bit of fast walk and trot when the trail's nice, you can't. It might be a safer way to come back in. At the same time, if you're 15 minutes behind the maximum time when you hit the 2 mile, you are going to have to race back in, and it's good to know. Good to know how much you really do need to hurry. Another thing my wife likes to do, she likes to come in near the back of the window. She likes to take it as easy on herself and her horse as she can. And so about 4 miles out, if she's on mid-time, and she thinks, and she's a little tired, or her horse is a little tired, she says, can I slow down, and how much can I slow down? And assuming again that the trail is paced at about 4 miles an hour, if you have 4 miles to go, 4 miles an hour, that means it's going to take you an hour to come in on mid-time. But you don't have to come in on mid-time. You can come in near the back of the window. It's perfectly fine to say, I'm happy to coming in 10 minutes behind mid, and still leave myself a 5-minute buffer. And again, using the same kind of math, basically I can say I can come in at 3.5 miles an hour instead of 4. So if you're on a gated horse, 4 miles an hour is kind of a quick walk. 3.5 miles an hour is kind of a slow walk, and you can ease your way back in. You don't have to hurry and have trouble. And or you can continue to ride at 4 miles an hour, and before the forward motion sign, you can still stop and graze and do whatever you want. You can burn off 10 minutes if you want to. So always during the ride, I'm saying, when do I need to get somewhere? Am I in front of, ahead of the window, behind the window? Do I need to pick up pace? Do I have time to stop and graze? If I need to stop and graze, do I need to go a little bit faster? So personally, I'm always running a little bit of math in my head, figuring out pacing. Hacks, using a GPS. This has made my life much happier out on the trail. With a GPS, particularly if the trail master has supplied you with tracks and you have them loaded on your device, you can always tell whether you're on trail. I have been early in my ride career, I was on one open trail, and I hadn't seen a ribbon in at least half a mile, probably more. And after that long, you start to say, am I really on trail, or have I missed a turn somewhere? And if you can look down at your GPS and see that you're on the line, it's like all's good. You know you're on trail. It's great for your confidence. You could still be going down the trail the wrong way, but if you've been paying attention, that's not real likely. It's nice to be able to keep track of how far you've gone down the trail. Is your mileage consistent with the mileage on the map? At some error, there'll always be some errors that creep in from your GPS or how they mapped it or whatever. So if I'm within 5% or so, I'm happy. You do want to look out for sudden big errors. Sudden big errors either indicate that you've made a wrong turn, or there's something wrong with the map. And if you have a GPS and you see these sudden big errors where you're either a mile short or a mile long, you can stop and evaluate the situation while you're on the trail. You may not be able to do much about it, but at least you're aware that something is going on. Also, if something happens out on the trail, if something happens to you or your horse, or you come upon another rider who's in need of help, a GPS is really nice to be able to get on your phone and say, hey, somebody's injured. This is exactly where I'm at. And people don't have to spend time looking for you because they know where you are. Even if I will often use a GPS, and often ride management hasn't given me any tracks. And so I can't tell whether I'm on trail or not, but I can use the GPS to confirm that I'm more or less in the right location on a map. This is a little example I did for a training exercise where I've got a trail going around a property. And if this is what my if this is my map and this is what my GPS looks like, I can see that my arrow is indicated right here, and I can do this pattern matching. I see the same pattern over here on the map here. I know I'm right here on the trail. So it's nice to be able, if the map is done with GPS data, it's very convenient sometimes you can quickly kind of confirm that, yes, I'm on the right part of the trail. I haven't done something odd and gotten off trail. Other hacks. From personal experience, I know a lot of people aren't very good at reading maps. NATRC is good at teaching you how to get better at being out in the trail and reading maps. But for those who can't read the maps, or aren't GPS savvy, and some people just aren't, this is a good time to find a buddy who's good at reading maps, who's good at staying on trail. I strongly recommend either riding with a GPS or ride with somebody who does use a GPS and knows how to use it. Work as a team. Various team members have different strengths. Some are good at reading maps and reading GPSs, and glom onto those people if you're not one of them.
And And I was going to add, like something you can do to prepare, like maybe you want to learn how to read a map and you don't want to do it at a ride when there's so much pressure. I did this with a friend, go to a place you ride all the time where you know the trails like the back of your hand. You don't need the map, but get the map, take it with you. And when you get to certain intersections, say, okay, I know exactly where I am. Can I find it on the map? And that will help you learn to identify things on the map, read the maps. I like to twist mine. If I'm like, oh, okay, I know I'm heading this way, I flip it. Um, but then you know where you are already, so you'll be confident. And when you're looking at the map and saying, oh, I know that's where I am, okay, and it'll help you start to make sense of it. And it's something you can practice without the pressure of, am I on time? Am I behind? Did I miss a turn? Am I going to miss the judges? Where's the PNR? So that's a good way to do it too. Or get the buddy to go with you and y'all do that together. But don't be afraid to learn how to use them because I too love my GPS. But if it dies or it breaks or you lose it or whatever, and you have the map, you're going to need it. So just something to think about.
All right. Kind of continuing on the idea of GPSs, a lot of us use different type of devices. Some of us use a dedicated GPS, whether it's a watch or a handheld device. Um, I personally I have both actually, but when I'm trail riding, I depend on the handheld for the most part. I like having the map on the screen. Unfortunately, with the handheld GPSs, they do have screens, but they tend to be small, and in bright sunlight, they're kind of hard to read. But but they're functional. The reason I kind of put up with not the best screens in the world and the small screens is they have real good battery life. Off a couple AA batteries, my GPS is good for 8 or 10 days of riding. It's weatherproof. I was just ribboning a trail up in Wyoming, or scouting a trail up in Wyoming a few weeks ago, and we were getting poured on. And I don't mind pulling my handheld GPS out in the rain. I do mind pulling out my phone in the pouring rain. So having something that's weatherproof is kind of nice. Um, it does help to be somewhat computer savvy. There can be some tricks to getting the tracks loaded or offloaded off these specialized devices. There's also the added extra expense. They can be expensive. I use a pretty base model GPS. You don't need the fanciest or anything, but you do want something with a mapping capability. I will say today's smartphones are wonderful. Most it, Everybody already has one. They have great screens. They're bright. They're high resolution. On the software you can get now, the maps are great. They're often better than the dedicated GPSs. There's some really good applications out there. Some are really cheap. Some have some significant annual costs. My concern about smartphones is they're fragile. If you drop one, it might be broken after the fact, and they're not great in the rain. And on the plus or minus side, they may be easier or a little bit harder to get the GPX tracks on. I've actually started posting GPS tracks on the Region 3 website, and some applications you can just press on the link and it will pop up in the map in your map application. So that's super easy. GPS smartphone apps, I'm not, it's, I personally use an Android phone. Years ago, I found something called US Topo Maps. I paid $12 for it years ago. It's what I personally use. Has great offline maps. Well, no, they're not great offline maps, but they're good offline maps, topographic maps, and it has all the basics I need. There's no annual fee, but it's just a basic map app, and it works very well. I know a lot of people who use Square by Gaia. The $40 a year scares me away, so I haven't gone down that road. But it has lots of features, and it cloud sort, and you can cloud. It's one of the big advantages of Gaia is if you're going to a new trail area, there's probably somebody a bunch of other people who've already marked trails out in that area using this application. And so you can usually get tracks from other people who've kind of crowdsourced the tracks for you. And so you can go to new areas and have trails kind of pre-laid out for you. Some people are using something called Easy Trail. I think that's somewhat associated with NATRC or with um, um, Top Trail. It's not as I just started to play with it a little bit, but there's that out there. There are lots of GPS apps out there, and just kind of find one you like. On the iPhone, I knew the one that was cheap, and it was for $2 many years ago, but they don't sell it anymore. Oops. But again, Gaia is on the iPhones. Again, lots of features, lots of access to other people's tracks. Easy Trail works on both. There are other apps. Find something you like. Um, they're free, and note that most of these apps will have a free version. The free versions usually will not let you download other people's trails, other people's tracks, but they may cloud source and you can use them for your own personal use. The free versions are often good enough for personal use. We're running a little bit long. We're already out at 7 o'clock, so we've been going for an hour now. This is kind of Trailmaster stuff. I'll be real quick. This is kind of looking at it from the opposite side of things. Is if you want to Trailmaster, it's real important to ribbon to your audience. For the novice and LED riders, we really try to kind of over ribbon for these riders. They're not as familiar with what we do. And then open riders, they've usually been doing this for longer, and they tend to be a little bit better, but not always be better, more experienced reading the maps and being out in trail, and are more willing to go longer without seeing a ribbon. I still like to put out, even if there's nowhere else to go out on a trail, I always put up sanity ribbons every 200 to 500 feet at most. Ribbons, also keep in mind, ribbon for the riders who've never ridden the trail. Often, like at local rides, you get the same people over and over again. They may know the trail real well. New riders or riders from out of state may not. Sometimes it helps to over ribbon because of local hazards. I've had cow and elk eat my ribbons, and so putting out extra ribbons or putting up really high can make a big difference. I'll also ribbon high because I've had people pull ribbons down on me, hikers and bikers. They can't reach way up high, but I've also had horseback riders pull ribbons down on us, and that's hard to manage. There are many things that a Trailmaster can do to make a rider's life easier. Good maps, good trails, good ribboning, good signing, good timing, and GPS tracks if possible. Messing up any of the above can ruin the rider's experience for the weekend. Again, Trailmasters strongly encourage using GPS trails. I'm just kind of quickly going through these because we've run a little bit long. This is an application, a website I put together for Trailmasters. These timing tables, if you're a rider, they look complicated. If you're a Trailmaster putting together, you realize how complicated they really are because it's really easy to make mistakes, particularly if at the last minute you're making changes. This is a website where basically you put in your timing points, you put in distance, and then you put in pace, and it automatically generates this timing table for you. At the same time of doing this, if this is set up before I did this before we had a leisure division, but you'd set up the novice and the open, and then it would automatically create an additional table for you, which is really convenient for the P&R teams and judges for moving people around in real time. This chart shows ride time, ride points, but the expected time that riders, the first rider and the last rider, will get through all these different points. Um, how to help your trail master stay on time. Please try to stay on time in your window. Riding outside the trail window might cost you points. Riding outside your window complicates judging. Uh, if you get lost or if you get behind and are trying to catch up, feel free to call us. It's if the trail master's out on trail trying to keep track of where everybody is, and if you're a half an hour or 45 minutes late because you missed a turn, we're wondering where you are and we're starting to look for you. If you give us a call and say, "Hey, this is where I'm at, and I'm coming," we may be able to stop the judges and say, "Hey, they're just a few minutes down the trail. They'll be here soon. Um, please wait for them." And sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. Sorry to rush through those last few slides. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Kris, do you have any additional comments?
I mean, I was just gonna say, if you're thinking about wanting to trail master at a ride, um, reach out to Bill or I. We're happy to help you, like on the logistics side. There's a lot more to being a trail master than just creating the maps and ribboning. There's the logistics of, if my riders get to this point at this time and my judges, I have access here, do I have time to move the judges before they hit another access point, right? Because we have to be able to get the cars in. And so ride flow in that sense is important. So if you're interested in learning more about that, please reach out to one of us. We're both more than happy to help. We can send you a Zoom link and we can talk. If y'all think y'all would be interested in a like Trailmaster 2 thing where we go into that detail, we're happy to offer that too. Y'all just let us know because we're here for y'all.
Also, if you want to become a trail master and if you want to shadow us at
Hmm.
some points in time to
Yes.
kind of see what we're doing, we would love to have you do that. All right. I'm not seeing any additional questions. I hope people found this useful. Um, I know I know I rushed through the last few slides, but I hope I picked points that people hope we picked points that people wanted to hear or were useful. I'm not seeing any questions. I want to thank everybody for attending. I want to thank Kris for helping out with this. And I don't know if we're going to have a talk next month. I think we're going to try to sneak in one more webinar before the end of the year. But thank you everybody for attending and have a good night.
Yes. Thank y'all. Have a great evening.